Is my voice clear?
Very good. You're good. Okay, guys. The last two guests I had on, first I had the niece of Osama bin Laden, and then this was followed by the guy who killed Osama bin Laden. And now to complete the circle of life, today I have the king of the honey badgers. I told you guys on social media that I would be speaking to someone who I have learned to greatly admire and who is arguably the most courageous person that I have ever met. Well, he's here with us today. Omar Mohammed, how are you doing, sir?
I'm fine. Thank you, Gad. And thank you also for clarifying the pronunciation of your name. It was very important to me.
Right, for those of you who don't know, before we came on, Omar asked if my name was Gad, and this is a common mistake that people make in the Arab world, where they think that Gad is somehow a Egyptian translation of Jad because the J becomes a G. No, Gad is a Hebrew name. It's one of the 12 tribes of Israel, so it's Gad. It's not Jad. Uh,
Yeah.
Oftentimes, when I start with a Zuwar Arabi, an Arabic guest, I like to break out the Arabic because people find it so exotic. For us, it's our mother tongue, but for other people, it's like, wow, you come from another planet. And so I
Yeah.
thought I would just start with just an opening question so that people can appreciate the beauty of Arabic. حاضر.
حاضر.
من كل اللهجات أي أحلى لهجة؟ في ناس بيقولوا اللهجة اللبنانية، في ناس بيقولوا اللهجة المصرية، بس ما كتير ناس بيقولوا اللهجة العراقية. شو رأيك؟
آه، خليني أعملهم لهجتين. أحلى لهجتين هم المصلاوية واللبنانية.
Yeah. What elegance, what grace. So I asked him, I said, there are many different dialects of Arabic. Most people think it's either the Lebanese dialect that's the most beautiful or the Egyptian dialect. Very few people say it's the Iraqi one. Omar is Iraqi. And then I asked him, what's your position on this? He said, let me clarify. The Egyptian and Lebanese Arabic are the most beautiful. Of course, he's probably lying, but he is such a graceful and polite guy that he said the right answer. Thank you, Omar. Okay, so I wanted to give the context to how you and I met. About maybe 2 months ago, I was sitting late at night watching a documentary. I think it's called Once Upon a Time in Iraq, and I watched it where they were recounting the story of how Saddam Hussein was ousted, how Al Qaeda came in, then how Daesh, ISIS came in, and so on. And you came up in that documentary, and I remembered while watching it that your story was an incredible one. And then about a month later, a few weeks ago, they reran this documentary. I watched you again, and then I said, I need to speak to this guy. He might be my new hero. So maybe you could start by telling us in any way that you want what your story was in Iraq in general and in Mosul in particular.
Well, it's kind of like crazy story, God. There was a normal guy who has big dreams. He loves the music. He loves chemistry. He's been waiting for the year to become an adult when he becomes 18 years old because that is the year when he will be allowed, according to his teacher, when he was a kid in the school, he will be allowed to ask questions. So he's been counting all these years. When he was a kid, he wasn't allowed to ask the questions, and he started collecting them. But when he approached to the adulthood, the Americans came and everything became chaotic. The terrorism emerged, the killing, everything. Like they started killing people for many things, but mainly for asking questions. And I started thinking of my teacher's words that you cannot ask questions now. And I realized that questions can kill.
Right.
Yeah,
This is what, 2003 we're talking?
yes.
Yeah.
Years moved on, and I continued documenting the history of Mosul from the moment of 2003 because I saw many shocking things, how people change their sides, how easily people become terrorists, or how easily people change from a side to another. People who have admired for years have turned to be like monsters, etc. And I became a teacher after finishing my studies at Mosul University. I became a teacher of history after I changed from chemistry to history because clearly that his chemistry didn't give me answers to the questions I had. That's why I went to study history. Finishing my MA, which I proudly have managed to obtain it and get it back from Mosul.
Oh my goodness!
And it's very important to have it with me. It's
in English.
Yes, the French expedition on Egypt, 1801 through Al-Jibirti writings. Al-Jibirti is the historian who inspired me to try to understand the history, because he also lived 3 years under the French occupation, and he also the only one who documented their history. So I have this kind of like admiration for him. And for this thesis I was kind of like not officially, semi-officially prosecuted by the jury. Because
jury at the university or at the
committee of the defense when I defended my thesis, because they thought that it's kind of like anti-Islamic, it has too many dangerous ideas, it talks about the Al-Azhar sheikhs that but it's not me, he himself, the historian, was from Al-Azhar. So I have been prosecuted for being a free thinker from the beginning. I continued teaching at the university, and it was only 6 months, and then Daesh arrived, and then everything got changed in my life.
I mean, what was the first time? I mean, we see, of course, I went through the Middle East. I went through similar history in the Lebanese Civil War, so I can certainly relate to what you went through. But, Daesh puts the terror to a completely new level. Absolutely. So when they're coming in with their black flags, what's the first emotion? I mean, you're feeling, you're terrorized.
You know that I still remember the moment. I've never went back through this memory because it's very dangerous for me to go back again to remember the same thing that happened, that we had, because they came from the neighborhood where I lived. It was in the part of the city that they launched their attack. God, that we had to move all the furniture in order to close the windows so the bullets will not come inside. And I still remember, I don't know if you have read the Divine Comedy of
Dante.
At that moment, when I looked at my family, children, women, my mother, my sisters, my brothers, my niece, my nephews, etc., all of them, it's kind of like pieces of flesh. They are no more humans. I didn't recognize them, because what I was only able to recognize is the fear, as if the fear had taken a shape of a creature that I can never imagine, even in my worst nightmares. So that's what I remember from that night, is that I saw the fear coming out as a creature.
Wow!
And I could see it. I could see it in the eyes of my brothers and sisters, and I could see it in the way my mother looked at me and at us, my sisters and brothers, and how she was desperate, that she thought that this might be the last moment we are alive or we are together.
How much did you, so prior to ISIS coming into Mosul specifically, how much of their news did you know of? Like, how familiar were you with who they were, their brutality, or was it all shut down? You couldn't get that information?
It's not. We were familiar with the terrorist attacks, like that happens day by day. I mean, it happens on a daily basis. For example, 1 week before they take over Mosul, there was another attack by so-called Sufi order terrorist organization known as Al-Naqshbandiyya, or the army of the Naqshbandiyya. It's the former Ba'athists who formed their own terrorist army. They took over Mosul for 24 hours, which is something we have been used to. I mean, it's something happens over the months. Like, they take over Mosul for maximum 2 days, and then the security forces take it back. But we have never seen something similar to Daesh. And we never thought that it's going to be like this. I mean, as I said, like maximum 2 days, okay, then life goes back to normal. We never expected Daesh to happen, and we never expected that night to last 3 years.
Okay, so it was 3 years of ISIS occupation that you experienced in Mosul.
Yes.
Okay, so then you start seeing the daily brutality. I remember in the documentary that I saw of you, you said it in a very Middle Eastern way that I can kind of relate to, where you said, if every day we don't have tons of executions, and what's wrong? What's happening? Right?
There's something wrong.
Something's happening. شو عم بيصير, right? So the people can't appreciate how the human mind works, right? We habituate to anything, right? It becomes our daily lives. When I was growing up as a child in Lebanon, seeing all the massive butchering left, right, and center, neighbors who used to love each other now are butchering each other. This becomes your life, and you find a way to somehow escape death at every corner. Now, in your case, it's even, I think, worse than anything that I've experienced, and it was pretty bad what I experienced. So how do you psychologically, emotionally deal with this daily brutality?
It was very difficult, but I managed to find this kind of mechanism that helped me. It might not be the right way, but it helped me. That I created different characters of me.
Within the privacy of your mind.
Psychologically.
Okay, yeah, okay.
That I created different characters. A character that doesn't mind seeing the violence in order to absorb this, in order to manage to continue what I am doing. But the real character of me, the real character of Omar, when I go back after documenting and seeing all of this, that was the most difficult part of my life. Because at that moment, I am the same person, I am the normal person, I am Omar, who has witnessed all of this, and then after documenting everything, writing down everything, making sure that everything is protected and preserved, then it starts, God, it's kind of like nightmares after nightmares. Like
wow.
I could even I don't need to close my eyes to see them.
Right. Well, I remember during your documentary that you appeared in, there would be a few moments when you're answering a question. Then I would see you going into this deep reflection, as if you are, you're transported into your private nightmares. And I really picked that up. Oh, I'm بأشعر بدني, right? I'm getting goosebumps, right? Because you can sort of see how, to borrow a term that from one of my friends, you have this kind of quiet dignity, right?
Yes.
But you could also see that there is massive trauma in this quiet dignity, right?
Yes, that's correct. And it's always difficult for me. In the beginning, it was always difficult for me to speak about it. But the more I spoke, the more I discussed this, the less trauma I would have. It becomes easier now. It's much easier now while I'm speaking to you. Yet there is still this kind of, as I told you, there are memories that I don't dare to visit.
Wow. The same friend that I just mentioned earlier that uses the beautiful term quiet dignity, he's a clinical psychologist, and him and I are thinking of working on a project together where we explore the cross-cultural differences and how people perceive the value of therapy. And one of the things that I was telling him is that from the perspective of the Middle East, therapy is something to be frowned upon because it's a culture of honor and shame, right? So the idea that I am going to go see a third party and I am going to air out my dirty laundry, I'm going to tell him about my weaknesses, about my fears, it goes completely against every mindset of the Arabic culture. So from your perspective, having experienced, the worst possible trauma that one could ever experience, I think, What's your view on therapy? Did you, if you don't mind me asking, have you sought professional help? So what? Tell us about that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's one of my problems now with my work on Mosul now. I am promoting the therapy as an important part of our life in the post-war, and that the people need to go there. But I always get the comments from the people saying like, "Why do you want me to go to a therapist? Am I crazy?"
Right, exactly. Crazy or weak?
Yes, and they think that, well, it's not just this, God. It's also how religion had impacted our life, that you don't need a therapist. The best therapist in such moments is your God.
Exactly. All the
So,
therapy is in that one book, right?
yes, and you have to go to your God. You have to pray to him. You have to cry in darkness. You shouldn't allow anyone to see you crying. I don't mind being seen crying. I mean, I don't find it like weakness. I am, after all, a human. So yes, I did seek professional therapy, and it's probably not good to expose. I'm not going to mention the name, but when I was in the United States, my therapist was a very old woman, and she have lived through also the Middle East. She is not Middle Easterner, but she was born there. So instead of her helping me doing my therapy, I started listening to her more than she listened to me. But this was the funniest part of the therapy I received, because it was much more human.
Right.
That goes completely against all the perception of therapy in the culture where I grew up.
Right.
That therapy is something that would undermine your dignity, it would undermine your, as you said, honor, it would undermine everything that you believed in, and it will also make you very close to become non-believer, because you are now believing in things that people are capable of doing, that is supposed to be only in the hand of God.
So God is the grand therapist. If you have a problem, you speak to him. In a sense,
That's
you are violating him by going seeking help
exactly,
elsewhere, right?
exactly,
Beautiful. Wow.
exactly like this.
Now you see why there's so many problems to resolve in the Middle East.
Yeah, which is a very big problem now we are facing in Mosul. People are really in very big trauma, and it's very difficult to convince them to do this. I hosted a therapist in Mosul. I can send you the video, the live streaming with the comments that we received from the people. They were attacking the doctor.
Wow, incredible. Okay, so now let's come. There's a lot more I want to talk about the daily life under ISIS, but you are very well known for what makes you a honey badger is hopefully the next story you're going to tell. I don't know if I want to say what it is, or maybe let you say it.
Why don't you help me saying it? Then I will follow up.
Okay, well, I often tell people who contact me, because they're afraid to speak out on university campuses. I'm afraid to lose my job. I'm afraid I'm going to be unfriended on Facebook. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. And as I explain in this book, you need to activate your inner honey badger. And one of the reasons why I thought that your story is so compelling, because as I said, you truly are the king of the honey badgers, because what you were doing from within Mosul under occupation of ISIS was documenting, using an anonymous blog called Ain al-Mosul, the Eye of Mosul. You were documenting all the atrocities, and ISIS was trying to find you to do some very nasty things to you, while you were literally surrounded next to your house by ISIS commanders. So I've given you the story. You take it from there.
Yeah, I mean that's the craziest part of all the story, is that my room is in the second floor, and literally, God, there is only one thin wall between where I sit with my computer and an ISIS senior leader.
Unbelievable.
That I could hear them speaking.
Now,
while reporting on Mosul, I could literally hear them speaking.
So were you never worried that through some technology, I mean, is there, I mean, did they have the technological sophistication to be able to identify where the IP address is
Well, of
physically?
course they do. Of course they do. That's why I spent more time in the cyber security learning websites than in any other place. So I would go. There is a very professional and important website called Cyber Arab, and there are other websites that helps me to hide my IP. But it wasn't only the concern of the online security, God. It was much more how do you control your behavior when you deal with the people.
With the
Because
people meaning ISIS?
ISIS and the people, because some of the people would simply just report you to ISIS.
Of course.
So this was the most challenging part, is how do you control your behavior that you don't make anyone feel or suspect you.
Now, does anybody in your family at that point know that you are Mosul I, or?
Oh, absolutely no. Even my mother would suspect me. She would think that I am hiding something, but she always tell me like, I trust that you are not in any trouble and that you are not going to put yourself in any trouble. I tell her, just don't worry. I am okay. I am fine. That was the concern also of having a family in such a situation.
Because they're not going to only punish you, they're going to punish everybody by proxy.
This is a general rule with Daesh, is that when they find someone who's against them, everyone with him is also responsible for this, so they are also punishable. They will be also punished. My friends, my family, everyone I communicated with, they will all be punished. These were the two main problems and challenges, the most challenging things. How to behave in a way that you don't look suspicious, and how to keep your family away from you.
Wow. How long, like, so there was a 3-year occupation of ISIS of Mosul. How much of that 3-year period did the Mosul I cover? Was it a
All
year?
the 3 years, God.
Oh, the whole time. Okay. Wow.
All the 3 years that I had to write letters to my mother while she is sitting next to me. I was writing letters to her, publishing them on Mosul I, because I cannot tell those words directly to her.
Wow. Well, and now the reality is, for all the cybersecurity protection that you think you took, you could have made a mistake. So at any given moment, they could be barging into your house. So you're living with that potential fear every second of every day, correct?
Yes, that's why I had 2 laptops.
Okay.
Because if they ask me, do you have a laptop? And the answer is no, that means you are hiding something. So that's why I had 2 laptops. One is the burned laptop that I use for Mosul I, and the other is full of Daesh materials, propaganda things. So when they open it, like,
they're happy.
Yeah, they all look what a good Muslim is this. So I mean, of course, I had to keep this laptop always open, and the Quran or ISIS or Daesh songs, etc. Their materials, they are always on in this laptop. Whenever they broke into our house twice, but they could never find anything, because, as I told you, before I go to sleep, I make sure that everything is well protected and hidden, that sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night thinking that, well, this might not be a good location, I have to change it.
Wow. Did you interact, not socially, I'm not saying you're sitting having argile with them, but did you sit down, or did you, because they're your neighbors, maybe?
I literally had dinner with some of them.
And what do you talk about?
I entered the house of many of them because I use them as informants. I transformed them without them knowing into informants, because, as I told you, and you probably have known this from the news, they are not from the moon. One of them was my student. Others were from my neighborhood. Others, they were just my friends. I mean, they were just normal people before. Others who just like, we were just surprised that how could possibly this person who is very cool, nice, and quiet person become an ISIS member. And others who from our neighborhood, it's just like, it was really shocking, like to see someone who is very young, he became an ISIS leader because he was actually a long time ago working with Daesh, and when they came, they just emerged from the beneath the ground. So yes, I had interaction with them. I had this guy who I relied so much on his information, because I would just give him the keywords, because I made sure that I don't ask questions or make him feel that I am questioning him. So I would use my knowledge of Islam and history, etc., to make him feel like, wow, Omar is a very knowledgeable guy on Islam and the Islamic State. So he would start talking, bargaining about the achievements of their so-called state Daesh. And one of the things, he literally gave me clarification on something happened when Daesh occupied Mosul in 2014. In June 2014, there was an airstrike on a location in Mosul that Daesh claimed it was civilians. I knew from that time that it was 17 senior leaders of Daesh, but I could never confirm it. In late 2015, in one of the discussions I had with this guy that he used to be my informant, he clarified to me and confirmed to me that they were really 17 ISIS leaders. So you see how things work. It's not that I keep collecting information. No, sometimes there are information that I cannot verify, but I wait until the right moment, and then I get like a confirmation on it.
But there's an expression in Lebanese Arabic. I don't know if you heard it, like ملازمة بج, right? Like that means you don't say the wrong thing at an inopportune time. So if the guy says something to you during your conversation, which then shows up on Mosul Eye, then it's not difficult to put one and one together and say, well, so then were you careful to not do this?
Absolutely. I mean, I managed to not do this for a long time, but at one moment, because the information was very important, so I rushed to Mosul Eye and put that information, which I later directly deleted, and I invited the guy who gave me the information. We had something called Spicy Chicken Restaurant in Mosul. I invited him there the next day, just to know that did he see anything, or did he manage to connect between Mosul Eye and me, or if he have ever seen this. We were eating, we had a conversation. At the end of a conversation, I found out that, oh my God, he didn't know anything.
Wow. Now, you in the documentary, you mentioned that, and you actually mentioned it earlier, that one of those ISIS guys was your former student, and that you had been thinking about maybe approaching him to talk to him, but then realized that would be a bad idea. Tell us about that story.
I saw him. You know, when he was my student, he was always a curious guy. He was always like contributing to the discussion during the class, but when I saw him in the old city of Mosul, in the what we call bazaar, he was with the Daesh uniform, with the gun. I was trying to get close to him, God, but something was pushing me.
But like what? To ask him, what are you doing with yourself?
Yeah, I wanted to tell him, what are you doing?
Right.
Why you have put yourself in this position? Where are all your dreams? I just wanted to tell him something that might like take him out of this. But then I realized, like, he has the gun.
Yeah. And his loyalty at that point is more to ISIS than to his former teacher or professor.
Exactly. So he would easily kill me. Or I would expose myself, God, like, it was really crazy to think like that. But I was ready to expose myself if the result was to save him.
Wow. Now, let me ask you this, and I know I'm asking you to speak about yourself, and you seem like a very modest and humble guy, but what drives your courage? How can we take the courage of Omar and bottle it in bottles so that we can give it to all the cowardly Western people who are afraid to open their mouth when they have nothing to fear, whereas you have everything to fear and you're out there doing the things that you did. What is it uniquely about you that allowed you to create Mosul Eye and do the things that you did?
It's the history, God.
Okay.
It's the history. The history, when I read the history of Iraq and Mosul specifically, I found many gaps. Gaps that couldn't explain to me how things happened. This is one. Second, history can create or can transform murderers and the criminals into heroes, national heroes. And this is exactly what happened in our history. History can erase a whole nation, which is exactly what happened in our history regarding the Jewish population of Mosul. I felt responsible that I should protect the history for the future generation.
Amazing.
That they should have a document with them when the history will come and judge them. That they have an evidence to provide. Because I know it's not going to happen now. It's going to happen in the next decades, and probably next century. The people will still ask, will keep asking the question of what exactly happened in Mosul. How did it happen? Who did it? I wanted to provide them with a document to protect their children in the future, to have an evidence to tell that here is what happened. You can read, you can know who was a criminal, who was a good person, who was a bad person, who committed the crimes, and who fought against the criminals and against terrorism, who decided to remain silent, and who decided to speak out. Because many of those who were silent in the past, they became the heroes of my generation, and in the past they were just part of the criminal regimes that created all of these problems for us. So yes, it's my responsibility toward the future generations, that I am still able to do it again, and if it happens again, I will do it again.
Wow. Now, when you and I were talking privately before, I invited you on the show, you sent me once, without any introduction, without anything, just a link. And at that time, I didn't even know your name. When I first contacted you, if you remember, I said, "Dear Mr. Mosul Eye." And then you send me this link about the man who is trying to revive or protect the Jewish history in Mosul. And so at first I thought, well, okay, because I told you that I'm a Lebanese Jew, you're just telling me this. And then as I scroll down, I see your picture, and then I see your name, which kind of proved my intuition about you, what kind of humanist you are, which, of course, is one of the biggest problems in the Middle East, because everything is viewed through the lens of tribalism rather than rising above. So what percentage of the people that you've interacted with in your life in Iraq would you say are true humanists versus committed tribalists? They don't have to be ISIS members, but they're still tribal. I am Shia, I am Sunni, I am Yazidi, I am this. Is there hope for the humanist bug to spread in the Middle East?
Well, God, as a historian, I have to be pessimistic, to be honest. It's a very difficult question, and they are a minority.
Yeah. And you don't think there's
a minority and under oppression.
But do you think there could be some cataclysmic, how when you light the dynamite, eventually it blows up. So do you think there is the
yes, okay. And I can see this, but it will take time in Middle East.
Yeah.
Especially in countries like Iraq. Probably other countries it will be easier. But in Iraq, it seems that we are moving backward.
Yeah.
In the history, that we are going into a smaller forum of communities rather than a larger one. That we are like decreasing the size of our circle of trust.
Right. It's funny because I don't know if you know the term in the Western context, identity politics, right? Which is
Yes.
something that, is one of those pathogenic ideas that I discuss in my own book, where I talk about the dangers of identity politics. And I use my personal background in Lebanon as a demonstration of what happens to a society that is completely organized according to identity politics. And I think Iraq is exactly the same as Lebanon in that, you don't have a homogeneity of one tribe. And especially a place like Mosul, which was very known for being, multi faith, right? There were Jews in the past. There's Yazidi, there's Shia, there's Christians, there's Sunni. And so, Iraq and Lebanon are the perfect warning of what happens when you organize everything in society along tribal lines.
Yes, yes. I mean, we both know the history of sectarianism. Sectarianism, not just in terms of Shia, Sunni, no. The politics of sectarianism that created a society that is incapable of producing what strengthens the social contract. For example, in Mosul, I no more can identify any social contract in the city. It's just a group of people who do not trust each other, living all together, and they cannot actually accept each other. There is nothing can bring them together. They are continuing their life, but when you look at the overall image, you just see, like, as you say, tribes.
Right. Had you ever met in Mosul a Jew?
Never. Inside Mosul, no.
So when was the first time that you ever interacted with a Jewish person?
Well, it was only online when I was still in Mosul. And the funny thing is that during the time of Daesh, and I would like to give a greetings to him, Professor Michael Lecker, who is the author of the best ever published book on the Constitution of Medina, which is the document of Muhammad when he came to Medina. It's the best ever published book on
and written by a Jew.
Yeah, and he was living in Haifa at that time, and we would communicate with each other because I studied Orientalism, and part of the Orientalism I found his book. So I keep communicating with him, and he writes to me in Arabic. That was during Daesh time, but even before that, I had a direct contact with the Professor Shamuel Murray, may his soul rest in peace. He also died because when I was studying Al-Jabarti, he is also the Iraqi Jew who is the only one who managed to get the original manuscript of the historical document of Abdurrahman Al-Jabarti. And in his like few months before he died, he kind of like assigned me to continue communication with the publishing house to actually publish his book. And I would publish this. I remember it's before Daesh. I published this on my Facebook account. Some of the people didn't speak to me. Some of them unfriended me, and the others started accusing me of being. We always suspected that you are Mossad. I told them like,
Jesus Yahudi.
Yes, it's just like he's a professor like me. I am a historian. He's a historian. We are both working on the same thing, and it's just normal to speak to him. And I published his letter, which is a very beautiful letter he wrote to me in Arabic. When I told him, literally, I told him, although I wasn't alive, I wasn't yet born when everything happened in Iraq, yet I still feel that I have a responsibility and I have to do something. And then he wrote me back it's a very painful letter to read.
Wow. In my own family, my grandparents, several of my grandparents are Syrian Jews. I mean, we're Lebanese Jews. Everybody, myself, my brothers and sisters, my parents, we're all Lebanese, but our grandparents, some of them come from Syrian Jews, but by marriage, we have in our family Iraqi Jews. So, for example, my mother's mother, one of her sisters, married Alber Baghdadi, one from
Oh, oh.
Baghdad, and they're Jewish. A good friend of mine, her name is Tiffany Gabe. She's from originally Iraqi Jew, so she often talks about the Farhud, right?
Yes, the Farhud.
You
Yes.
know, the persecution of the Jews. I think it was 1937, was it?
No, in the
In
40s.
the 40s. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. So, you know, it's amazing because people, oftentimes I meet people from the Middle East and they've grown up in a world where Jews don't have never existed in the Middle East.
Oh,
And
yeah.
meanwhile, they've been there for, you know, longer than
I mean,
everybody else.
they have been in Mosul, for example, for over 3,000 years. Yet, when you read the history of Mosul, you barely see any mention to the Jews.
Wow. Are there any Jews right now that still live in Iraq, even if they may not be practicing? Like, what's the census
Well,
say?
I mean, I cannot expose any details, God, but yes,
Okay, but very few, I suspect.
we cannot talk about this.
Okay, we
Sorry.
cannot talk. Okay, fair enough. I understand. Have now, I don't want to say where you are now. I don't know if you want to. I mean, I know where you are, but I don't want to say anything. But it's a place where there could be people that don't necessarily like what you've done. Is this,
Absolutely.
as a matter of fact, some might argue that place is itself an Islamic state. Uh,
That's correct.
that is correct. So, do you ever worry today about your personal safety, given that people now know who you are, right?
Every day, God, every day.
So what? But you just go about your business.
Yes, yes, every day. And I still use I still have all of this like security measures and security precautions. I still make sure that I am safe when I go. I make sure that the direction is safe. I take too much measures that actually sometimes makes my life really difficult.
Wow. Now, I hope you don't mind me asking this, and you could say whatever you want, whatever you feel comfortable with. Is your family safe, whether they are in Iraq or outside Iraq?
I hope, I hope, I hope, I hope they are safe. What makes them safe is as long as I'm not with them, they are safe.
I see. Okay. Do you ever, I mean, it's hard to tell what the future holds, but do you ever foresee going back to Mosul, resuming your life in Mosul, or do you think that ship has sailed?
I don't know. I don't know if the Mosul I loved, the Mosul I cared about, the Mosul I am still hoping to recover. I don't know. It exists physically, God. It only exists in my. It only exists in my dreams, in my imagination, in my books, in my written documents. It only exists there. It exists in the eyes of my mother. It exists in the memories, but it's no more there. It's gone. I
Right.
mean, and I cannot go back to another strange city. It's not. It's no more my city. The city that I dream of. Only on one condition I would go back there, and I have said this many times, that the Jewish synagogue of Mosul be rehabilitated, reopened, and not to be museumized, to make it a museum. No, to see the Jewish people can visit and also practice their faith freely there. When I see this happen, then this is my Mosul. And that's why I am documenting every single war the Jewish, mostly Jewish, are living, whether in Israel or in other cities, especially the elderlies, to document everything, because I feel now it's also my responsibility to protect their memory.
Incredible. What are you working on these days? I mean, I think you said that you did an MA. Are you thinking of continuing doing a PhD? Maybe.
I'm about to finish my PhD. It's almost done.
Oh, congratulations, soon to be Dr. Muhammad.
Yes, yes, it's almost done. My PhD is on the historiography of Mosul in the late 19th century.
And are you hoping subsequently to resume an academic career, get a job
I
somewhere?
I'm already teaching at the university.
Okay, where you are now.
Yes,
Okay, very nice, very nice. In the language of that land or in
yeah,
Arabic? Okay,
yes.
look at you, look at you. But you don't speak Hebrew, do you?
I can only read a few texts with the help of dictionary.
Okay, because I
But
often
I can say like Boker Tov. I
Boker
mean,
Tov, good morning.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I often joke around when I'm not a big fan of Barack Obama, and so I often when all of my leftist academic colleagues were so impressed with how worldly he is because he says the word Pakistan, right? He says
yes,
Pakistan. So بالعربي بنقول بيسكروا بالزبيبة, right? They get right, get it? So wow, Pakistan, it's so impressive. Whereas
yeah,
guys like you and me who speak 3, 4, 5 languages fluently, that's not
yeah.
impressive because
No,
Nobel Prophet Barack Obama, may peace be upon him, says Pakistan nicely, right?
yes, yes, yes. And I mean, on this note, like his staff and administration, they are coming back. It's yeah. I mean, it's concerning, to be honest.
So, am I detecting, if I may enter into the world of politics, am I detecting that you would have been, if you were an American, a supporter of Orange Man?
Not exactly, but I would be very much careful to deal with the other guys.
I agree. This is what people don't understand often about me when first of all, I'm Canadian, so I often tell them I don't really have a dog in the fight, right? It's not as though,
Yes,
but as an outsider, but who understands the world as it is rather than some utopian unicornia, many of the ideas that are espoused by the Democrats for someone who comes from the Middle East, who understands those dynamics, are not very good ideas.
yes,
And as you know, of course, the Middle East is a place that understands the language of might, right?
yes,
Might is right, right? So when you acquiesce, when you concede, when you are ultra diplomatic, all that they hear is weakness, weakness, weakness. So it's nice to speak softly, but always have the big stick in your hand.
exactly,
And
exactly.
Donald Trump had that, right? But my
Yes.
leftist progressive academic friends don't understand these things.
No, they don't. And I mean, especially their policy in Middle East, it was a destructive policy, and having the same staff going back to to another administration for another 4 years, and we know how horrible this. We know that we have a very big. I don't want to call it elephant because elephant is a very nice creature. We have a very big monster there, and this monster is waiting to take advantage of the moment. So
Sorry about the light that's shining upon me.
no,
Maybe
no,
that is God that is shining upon our conversation.
yeah, I am happy to see the sun.
uh, what? So, do you want to tell us about any before we end this incredible conversation? I could keep you here for another 5 hours, but I'm sure you need to finish your PhD and so on. Are there any projects that you're working on that you'd like to use this platform to promote before we wrap it up?
Well, I have two projects already working on. One is that I am happy to announce that I have won the grant to plant trees in Mosul.
Very nice.
So I will be reforestating the whole highway of the university and connect it to the river with like a green path. And the second is I'm still getting books to resupply the University of Mosul with books. So those are my most beautiful projects. But the other one that is put on hold is in the future to build an opera house, and the first concert ever to be played, the first piece of music ever to be played there is what Itzhak Perelman played in the Chandler's List on the city of Karakol,
Wow.
the Jewish town.
My goodness. I have to tell you, I am not easily impressed, but you are the model of what a good human being should look like. And if you ever make it to my neck of the woods, it would be an honor to show you what good Lebanese food is by inviting you to our house. My wife is also Lebanese, and when we cook, we cook. And so
Yes,
hopefully we will.
it will be the pleasure and the ultimate pleasure to meet with you in person. Hopefully hopefully this will happen one day. I was supposed to come to Canada, but the corona things have actually canceled many trips. But still, we can still communicate over this, like the virtual screen. But even with the virtual screen, God, we can still like relate to each other. We can still actually move through the same moments and the same memories. That what makes us humans. It's no matter what the way of communication is, as long as you use your human values, you will always be able to feel the other.
Beautifully said, buddy. Shukran, Habibi. It's a real pleasure to meet you. I look forward to continuing it.
كلك ذوق.
Shukran, Habibi. Okay, guys, stay on the line. I'm going to turn off. Thank you so much, Omar.